no action descriptions that are more than 3 lines long, and no lines of dialogue that are more than 3 lines. That's a standard rule. And,
Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Ihsan.
and I'm Eric Mertz.
And this is episode 179 of the podcast. It is March 5th, 2025, as we record this. And today we're talking about screenwriting. 5 rules of screenwriting. Eric knows all of the juice. Yes. We want to thank all of our existing patrons for believing in our work offline. And here on the podcast, you can become a patron of the arts and us at patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan, IHSAN, for books, writing instruction, coaching, and planning. And you can go to patreon.com/Strange Air Stories for short stories in the paranormal mystery genre. What's up in your world, Eric?
It's been busy. It's been busy. I've got a client project I'm finishing. I've kind of tabled my work for the time being. I've got a big client deadline to hit sort of early next week, so I've been really, really focusing on that. But I will have a revamped Patreon, new stories, new angles, new things. So I've been working on that sort of concurrently. But yeah, right now it's just finishing this client project. And
so the revamped Patreon, is that going to be this month or next month? When should people head over there?
I would say, like, have a fun weekend. Go out, enjoy the weather. Maybe early next week, really get into your work. And then by the time you come back and listen to this podcast, I would say, next week's version of this podcast, then you should start looking at Patreon. That's when I would do it.
Okay.
Right now, it'll look like the old, and you don't like.
All right. So by the end of the month, you're going to be solid into the new. Yeah. Okay. And if you're on Eric's mailing list, then yes, you'll know when exactly to go over there.
And actually, if you're on my mailing list, like I am going to be putting out a little video conversation about what I'm doing this week.
Oh, fun.
And I haven't named what this new series is going to be. I've got 2 names. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be asking people to vote which of those 2 names they like. And so I'll be making the decision on what this little series is called. Because this is a sub-series of my main series. It's going to be kind of a sub-series of it. Uh-huh. And I want to give it its a unique title. And if you're on my mailing list, you'll get to vote in what that is called.
All right. So join Eric's mailing list to vote on the new series name.
Absolutely, please.
Also, I have to say, nobody has written a comment about the frog and toad. Come on, guys. I want that t-shirt. So you're going to have to vote on who we are. Which one of us is frog? Which one of us is toad? Please send in a comment.
Yeah, please do.
Also, do you know, I have never, in the years and years that I've been doing this podcast, I have never asked anyone to send us a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. So let's just make that a call to action, folks. Go in and please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Even if it's just the comment, it's just Eric is Toad and
there you go.
So that's still a comment.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. All right, what are you up to?
Well, I'm getting ready for that Island Writers workshop in Anderson Island. So you can the link is in the show notes. You can register for the class if you're in Washington or Oregon and you want to head out over to Anderson Island. It's going to be on aligned authors, what it's called, a workshop in intuitive planning and strategy. I'm talking about aligned embodied action. So that's kind of an intuitive and authentic way to approach goal setting and strategic planning. So that's going to be fun. It's this experiential full day workshop packed with all these hands-on exercises and practical tips and resources. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about it. And I'm actually meeting with the, I don't know what to call her. She's the one that invited me to do it. So I don't know if she's like the head of the writing group that's running it or what, but we're having a meeting, a little business meeting about that after we record here. And then, and also some of the people that are taking the classes have already reached out to me and set up other, side coaching things. And so that's exciting too. I love teaching. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah. Yep. I'm steering my train towards fall and winter and spring things for this year, next year. So
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
And I'm getting back into movement. I'm trying to move my body more, taking more classes. I kind of I didn't drop off my movement when I was traveling because I swam a lot and I walked a lot, so that was plenty of movement and body, and I felt it in my muscles, so I knew it was enough. But yeah, I'm getting back into the weekly routine of moving my body to sweaty, like really working out hard. And that's been feeling really good. I mean, my muscles hurt, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I'm not injured. So yay.
I'm about to jump in on that too.
So that's exciting. I'm having a hard time with sort of the mindset, because I feel, it takes so much time to work out, especially if you're driving across town to go to this class and, your gym bag. And then afterwards, the up, do your showering or just even changing clothes. Because yesterday I took a cycling class before going to the shift at the bookstore, and there's no shower at the Star Cycle place. So I packed a gym bag. I show up in my workout clothes, workout, sweat is dripping off of me. I just throw on my sweatshirt, race to work, and kind of halfway open up the store, and then lock myself in the bathroom and take all my clothes off and clean up as best I can and get dressed and put on some lipstick and, okay, now I'm ready for work. So it just takes up a lot of time to fit working out in our lives. And it's easy to be oh, whatever, I don't have time for that. But, I'm going to be 51 this month. So I can't ditch moving my body and treating myself with kindness and with care and nurturing if I'm not also trying to stay as healthy as I can. So I'm battling that, takes too much time, but I need it. I have to go do it. So I'm trying to prioritize that and kind of figure out the balance of, if I don't work out, then I can't be a writer, I remember Jo Penn saying that when she wrote The Healthy Writer, she's working out so that she can sit at her desk and do this job that she loves. And I'm trying to remember that, I can't do this job unless I go. So in a sense, working out is my job. It's part of the job description. And that helps me make me go. So yeah, lots of client work coming up, and the work-life balance for me is kind of non-existent right now. And that's okay, because it will balance out later. And I've talked with, my husband about okay, from, the next few months, it's going to be I'm not going to hang out very much anymore. I'm just going to be working at the bookstore and then coming home and working at the desk. So he knows about that. We've figured out how to, there is balance. We still have date night once a week. I still have to sit in the hot tub and journal and have my centering time. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty much full on for the next couple months here. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. It's a new thing.
So I am reading the same stuff, How You Find Your People, How to Make Meaningful Friendships as an Adult. I still have the Dream House I decided to focus on one book, and then, so I was halfway through Dream House, so I'll pick up the Dream House as soon as I'm done with You Will Find Your People. And yeah, I've got a lot of client manuscripts too. I'll probably just be switching to that and reading those, which I still count as books, and I still put them in my planner as books read for the year. Because, I read the book. Just because it's not published yet doesn't mean it didn't count.
Right. 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 I agree.
What are you reading?
I just finished Mort.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know what? I love Terry Pratchett. I really do. It's such fun reading. Um, there is a maddening quality to Terry Pratchett books because I am so acutely aware of like the pacing and rhythm in fiction, and especially chapter breaks, scene breaks, those kind of things. Like I'm just so keyed in and focused as a writer. That's where I like I when I outline, if anything, I write what I want the breaks to feel like.
Mm.
Comes from me being a screenwriter. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But Terry Pratchett, no chapters. No chapters. It's just like scene, scene, scene. It works, it flows, but it's really hard for me to read his books because they're like I feel like I'm just I'm in a river without a port and I'm trying to get where I know I'm going to get where I'm going to go because I'm following the flow, but it's like I like a little like, oh, this is a major break. This is a minor break. This is a
Mm-hmm.
big break. That rhythm is so, in my head that it's again, I enjoy the books and I have such a great time, inhabiting his world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's really hard to read sometimes. But what I'm picking up now, and so I have this if anybody's into graphic novels, manga, anything like sort of Japanese culture, um, I read. There's a manga artist named Yoshiharu Tsuge. His last name is spelled Tsuge. He writes these autobiographical. They were big in the Japanese sort of comic underground in the 70s and 80s. He's sort of like the R. Crumb of
Mm.
Japanese R. Crumb. And there's like three books that I got from the library of his. I'm reading a book. There's a book called The Man Without Talent, and there's a book called Red Flowers that I'm picking up. I'm gonna read, and I'm gonna go reread another one of his books that I really like. They're just these really bizarre short stories about this man's life. They take place in sort of post World War II Japan. Um, and it's just all it's just odd. There's something really odd about it. It's sort of the same appeal for me that like Murakami has, where it's
Oh,
like
I was
you're
just
reading this.
thinking of him, like Japanese surrealism. That
It's
sounds like
so it's
Murakami.
so bizarre. Like the stories will be like, here's an example of one of his short stories. It's about a guy who's trying to get away from the city. He goes hiking in the mountains and he goes to a hot springs in the Japanese mountains, and he encounters this like old woman who runs the hot springs, and she's got this person who's been like kind of squatting in the hot springs, and so he chases the guy off. Like that's the story, and then he has this like little love affair with this much older woman, and then that's the end. It's like there's something there, and it's so like I read them over and over like what is this about. But anyway, if you like that kind of thing, they are amazing. They're amazing.
Cool.
Fantagraphics. I think Fantagraphics puts them out.
Okay.
Amazing books. Amazing books. I may
Cool.
buy them and just populate my shelf with them because I just like to look at them all the time. And they're the kind of thing I could just pull off the shelf and
Uh-huh.
go, "Oh, I'm going to read this little 5 minute weirdness." Amazing, amazing. Graphic sexually, so don't like it's not comic books like it's there's a lot of that, but like yeah, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff.
Cool. You told me you had a tidbit for the
I
listeners.
do, I
What's your
do.
tidbit?
The graphite pencil. Like
What?
if you are a person that likes to write by hand, which I do, I write a lot of my notes and like I write a lot of outlines by hand. I love pencil. I love the feel of a pencil, but my problem is like the conventional Dixon Ticonderoga or like, and
Number
I'm such
two
a nerd.
pencil.
Like I know
Mm-hmm.
what, yeah, the number two. Like it's hard to get the right point.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard, they break, which breaks your rhythm, right? If you're writing intensely, they'll break. A graphite pencil never dulls, never breaks. It is a pencil that acts like a pen. So if you love the pencil feel, right? But you struggle with like the sort of like imperfections of a pencil as a utility, get a graphite pencil.
So when you say
Get one.
graphite, are you talking, is that like the brand name or is that just any mechanical pencil that
It's
has
a
the
type of pencil.
click?
It's a
Oh.
type of pencil. It doesn't do the thing. I'm holding it for those of you. I'm doing sight gags on the radio. Like, it doesn't do
Mm-hmm.
anything, but like the tip here, like I've been writing with it and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's a pencil that acts like a pen because it never breaks. You don't need to sharpen it. And it's amazing. It's
Cool.
amazing. My wife has this client, I'll just spill how I got it, who gets a lot of, like, she has a teenage son and she gets a lot of gifts for her teenage son from her mother, but the
Mm-hmm.
teenage son doesn't want to play with like funky cool puzzles and weird art stuff. So we get these like shopping bags full of like, wood puzzles and like cool metal sculptures and things that like you get at a gift, like a really cool gift shop.
Uh-huh.
And this was in it. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I have to have this.
That one's
And
mine.
it has changed my like workflow for a week. Like I love a pencil. I prefer a pencil to a pen, but I don't like the fact that they break and it ends up being, it breaks your flow. So get a graphite pencil. If you're a pencil person, it is worth, I think they retail for like $6. Um,
And you just buy them in any office store. You just look for graphite pencil.
or an art store. I think they
Mm-hmm.
might be like more an artist, tool,
Okay.
but like
Well, I'm just gonna have to.
you want this thing.
All right.
And it comes with this cool little blotter thing you put on your desk so you can rest the pencil, give it its own little headrest. It gets its
Oh,
own little pillow.
I don't think
Gives
I'd
it,
find it
you
under
just
my desk. It was like
if
I
you
went to turn on my computer this morning and my wireless keyboard had run out of battery over the night. And so
oh
I couldn't, and I was like looking all over for a cord, and I was like I couldn't even see underneath. I'm like pulling things up to see if the cord was on my desk somewhere, and it wasn't. And yeah, so.
it creates the graphite pencil creates the hierarchy on your desk because I put all my pens in here. This is where the
Uh-huh.
rabble hangs out. This is like public housing, like right here. Like everybody goes in here. Whatever. The graphite pencil has a little headrest and it gets its own spot on the desk. It's like this is the life and it deserves it because it is better than everything else.
That's awesome.
In
All
all
right.
seriousness, it is an amazing tool.
I'm gonna have to just go get one then, because I don't think I've ever had the
Yeah.
experience of using a graphite pencil. I have lots of like
Here's the deal.
mechanical pencils, but those break too and run out
I will
of.
make a promise. If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts and you tell us about it, to the first person that leaves a review, I will buy and send you a graphite pencil
Wow,
to your home address. I will do
that's
it.
awesome. Very
Consider it
cool.
done already. Yeah,
Consider it
leave
done.
that review.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get into the meat of the topic.
It wasn't my like rambly sense of humor. That wasn't the
The
topic.
topic. I think we should totally
Me
do an
just
episode on that.
me just gushing about pencils. Like
I love it.
so here's what I want to talk about this because I think that I'm preparing curriculum for word crafters. I'm going to teach a class. I'm going to hopefully teach a class for word crafters about how to write a screenplay. I think that a lot of people who write a book or have a cinematic idea look at the screenplay like it's this a bottleneck, right? Like I would write my story as a movie, but I don't know how to write a screenplay. And I think that is an unfortunate inhibitor for people because writing a screenplay is really at least the bare bones how to write it. It's very simple. I mean, it's a very simple medium it's describing action, it's portraying sound. It's very simple. If it is very simple, and there are some very simple rules to follow or ways that just to get into how to write a screenplay that I want to talk about.
All right. So that already elicits questions because I thought that screenwriting was just dialogue. And so how could you describe action with only dialogue?
Well, I'll do the quick and dirty version of what is in a screenplay. So if you were to
Okay.
do a screenplay and it was taking place in my office, you start with what's called a slug line, right? And the slug line says interior, office, morning. That is the heading of the scene. It tells me I'm in the interior of a space. It is an office, generically described, and it's morning. Okay. You don't get specific in a screenplay unless it's absolutely necessary. So I wouldn't say sunny morning. It's just morning, right? So that's the first thing, slug line, right? Then there's action. The next element is called action, and that would be describing what's in the scene. And again, only relevant. That might be Eric sits at his computer. He, in front of a microphone, he is recording a podcast on his computer. That would
So
be enough action to describe what I'm doing.
it
The fact that I'm wearing a red
arguably is that
hat,
too much? Because if you just said he's recording a podcast, wouldn't that mean you were sitting
well,
at a desk in
because
front
it's
of a microphone?
relevant to, I'm doing it on a computer, would then would then feed into the dialogue that would follow. Because if I
Okay.
was just recording it on a recording device or in front of a phone, that might be different.
Okay.
But it sets the bare minimum for the interaction. So that would be the action that we would have. Um, and then you would have the next element is character. So if I was speaking first, it would say Eric, and then it would say, what the dialogue that I give to you. And then if you are going to respond, it would say Val, and it would be your dialogue. Now, somewhere in that action description, it would say that if even though the action of the scene is taking place in the room, interior office day, that you are on the computer. So that would be visually described. Eric is talking to Valerie, who is on the computer talking back to him. They are on a Zoom screen. You could also do it that way. Zoom screen. And then our dialogue would continue until the end of the scene. And then there would be an action element at the end of the scene that would say, Eric removes his headphones, unplugs his microphone, turns off his computer, and leaves. That would be the end of the scene. Okay. The next scene, let's say the next scene of my day is I'm in driving to the coffee shop. It would say interior car moving later, and then it's describing me in the car. Eric sits driving in the car down a country road, listening to, country music, and that would be that. So the bare minimum, if you can see the details of my office are like there's a yoga roller on the floor, and I'm wearing a red hat, and it's like all that stuff is not relevant. That's up to the screenwriter. Does not create that. That is created by the set designer, the director, the actor who might say, "Hey, I'm a Red Wings fan. My character's a Red Wings fan. I'm gonna wear a Red Wings hat." Something like that. Unless it is absolutely relevant to the story, it does not exist on the page. I would not say in that subsequent scene that the country music was, George Strait. Country music, that would be the music director's decision to say, "Oh, we have the rights to George Strait. Let's use that here. It fits the character. It fits the mood." So a screenplay is in very minimal, very bare bones depiction of what is happening on the screen. That's what's a spec-styled screenplay.
And what do you mean by spec styled?
So there's like three kinds of screenplays, right? There's the spec style is what you write on spec. It's what I write for a client when they say, "Hey, I'm gonna go out and see if I can find a producer. I'm writing this on spec. Like I'm speculative here, and it's written with the barest essentials because the idea is then that producer picks up that script and says, "Oh, I can see this happening. Let's maybe make that office in a basement, and let's make him a little more like Christian Slater from Pump Up the Volume, or let's make her a little more like." So that's where the spec script is like the barest outline of a story because that producer wants to put their stamp on it, and in most cases the producer's like, "Well, we don't have the money for this really modern office. Let's make it kind of an ad hoc podcast." So that's the producer takes the spec screenplay and then they do what's called a shooting screenplay, and that starts to add in a little more of that detail. That's like, Eric is a Red Wings fan. He's wearing a Red Wings hat. Val, is always wearing black and white because those things might be relevant to the story. Maybe
Hmm.
you know, yeah, whatever. Um, Eric always listens to the same country song because that's like, maybe it's a motif or something. Who knows? The producer then takes that spec script and puts you know, their stamp on it. And that becomes like the production draft. Um, and then there's the shooting draft, which comes later, where all of the camera angles, because what you don't describe in a spec script is, over the shoulder shot of Eric typing, or, bird's eye view shot of Eric driving. Like that's the shooting script. That's when the director of photography comes in and says, hey, I like the scene of this guy driving down the road, but if it's a beautiful country road, we want to get a big, shot of the road, like, so that's when that person puts their stamp on it. So each iteration of a screenplay adds the layer that person, that next professional, that adds their layer of
So
stuff.
so the first one is the on spec, which is like the rough draft, the outline, the bare bones. And then the
Yep.
producer gets it and turns it into a shooting screenplay, adding his own stamp, relevance, the over the shoulder camera, shots, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. I
Yep.
just wanted to make
Yep.
sure I was
That
up
it's
to
like
speed. And then what's the third one?
it's a production draft where it's just got everything in it. It's cuts and fade ins and fade outs and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So let's just get in and do quick 5 rules that if you're thinking about doing this, that like a screenwriter has to keep in mind, right?
Okay.
We'll go through them kind of quickly. The first thing to know is that you only just, and I already said this, but like you only write what you can see or what is relevant to action, right? So I don't write, Eric is thinking about breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might have the undertone in the stream that I'm hungry and it's making me antsy, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't write Eric is thinking about, because I
Mm-hmm.
can't see what Eric is thinking about. Um, I can see that maybe Eric is doing this a lot, maybe he's scratching his neck and he's, doing this because he's antsy, because he's hungry, but you you might add that action as if it's relevant to the scene, but you wouldn't put, Val's thinking about walking the dogs or Val's dreading her day.
Mm-hmm.
That would have to be in the performance. That comes later
Mm-hmm.
when the actor gets the script and they say, "Director, what am I feeling here? Why am I antsy?" Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're hungry. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so play it like you're hungry. Everything is about, in that first iteration, is about giving each of those professionals room to do their thing.
Okay. It really
Um,
is a collaborative art form.
Yeah, if you write, and that's number 2. You never direct on the page in a spec script. You never direct on a page. Um, uh, Amateur writers love doing it, and amateur producers probably thrive on it. Like probably like it because it. But like in a professional sense, you don't direct off the page. You want to. The art is to create to plant the seed of what you want out of that scene, but you don't direct it. You want to lead the person to. It's kind of, I don't want to say manipulation, but it is a little bit of a manipulation. Like, I want this scene to be restless, and I want to show it. I've got to show it so that the actor will want to do each subsequent iteration, like plays on the core value. So but you don't direct from the page.
Okay.
Um, in a writing sense, this is the most important thing to know, right? One page of a screenplay is in general 1 minute of screen time. So a 120-minute movie is a 120-page script. So, and that doesn't exactly balance out. Sometimes you'll have like a 2-line scene that is a long, maybe it's a long landscape scene that takes 30 seconds. And, it doesn't quite, but it really ends up working out that way.
Mm-hmm.
So one page is 1 minute. So when you're writing a 300-page script, you are now writing a 5-hour movie, which you will never sell. You have to
Right.
know that its time is on the page. So and then the sort of 3A rule there is no action descriptions that are more than 3 lines long, and no lines of dialogue that are more than 3 lines. That's a standard rule. And if you're hearing this and you're thinking, well, wait a second, like movies have great speeches, wait till the last rule. But in general, when you're writing, you want to keep your action blocks 3 pages, 3 lines or less,
And when you
and
say
your
lines,
dialogue.
do you mean actual lines on the page or three
Yep,
sentences?
3 lines. So if you
Three
want to, if
lines.
you're looking at the page, if that action just block goes more than 3 lines, you probably need to trim it. If the dialogue is 3 lines, you may want to trim it. But I'll amend that rule here in a moment.
Okay.
And producers look at that. They'll look at the first, especially the first 5 pages of a script, and say, "Wow, this is long-winded. This is like, they want to see that the things move crisply." The big rule that I always, when you're forming scenes, right? So if I'm thinking about the scene in my office, it's you arrive late and you leave early, right? So I walked into my office at 7:30. I sat down, I hooked up the microphone, I did all those things. So did you. And we're going to, matriculate to the end of the scene in 5 minutes. We're going to undo all that stuff. You don't start a scene when the person walks in the room. In general, you start the scene when a beat before the action starts, and you usually stop the scene right when the action hits its peak, because that's the like you usually cut on action or cut on emotion. You don't, if the scene ends with me getting up and removing my hat and doing all that, there has to be a reason for it. But in general, if you're thinking of a scene, if the scene's going to take place while they're recording a podcast, you want to find the latest possible point you can arrive and get out of there as quickly as possible, because that other stuff isn't interesting.
So you're ending on the end of
End
the
on
action
emotion.
and on
Yeah,
motion.
end on emotion,
Okay.
one way or another, whether that's action or maybe it's me saying like, hell, I can't do this anymore. And then like you cut there because it's like, I'm making a proclamation. It puts the emotional volley back to you. And then who knows?
All right.
But here's the last rule.
Oh, that was okay. I
Rule.
thought that was 5. Okay.
That was 4. Like
That was
3
4.
lines, 3 lines, 3 pages, 1 page, 1 minute. We can call that one rule. That's just
Okay.
structure stuff. But here's the big rule. All of those can be broken. Every single one of those can be broken. Watch a Quentin Tarantino movie, watch a Martin Scorsese movie, watch any one of those things. Outside of directing on the page, which is probably the big sin that gets people's spec scripts turned away, that's what makes Quentin Tarantino movies great, is that he knowingly breaks the rule in a way that he gets permission to do it. And he doesn't get that because he's Quentin. He gets that because when you open his script, he creates characters that talk for 5 minutes about, buying burgers in Amsterdam, and it's memorable. You're laughing because you remember it, and
Right.
it's unforgettable stuff.
Right.
He
And
broke
I
the
know
rules,
exactly what
but-
movie that is.
Right. He knows how to break the rules. Marty Scorsese breaks the rules in every script because he knows how to break them. And scripts that get made follow the rules to a certain point. They buy the reader's trust, the reader being the producer, the studio, whomever, and then they break the rules in such a way that becomes their signature and makes the script unique. You might, if you watch a horror movie where you linger on an empty screen for a minute, that's, in a script, that's dead. Like you can't do that because it's lingering in on stillness, but it might be what creates the mood.
Right.
Your character that gives that long speech about cheeseburgers, that is memorable stuff.
Royale.
Marty Scorsese's 12-minute, round table scenes in movies, the Osage one, the Killers of the August Moon, you couldn't do those, but unless you know how to do it, then you break the rule. So you have to know what they are to break them. And I think that's what, you kind of have to know what you're doing to cheat it. So
Excellent.
those are the rules.
That's super interesting. I'm so glad that we did this. I don't write
what might be
screenplays,
fun-
so I'm like, oh, the Scrivener has a little template for screenplays. I could write a screenplay, but I don't know any of the
And
rules.
you can. I mean, I'm helping somebody write their first one in my writers group, and it's like, you can, you see the first submission of 20 pages is like, oh, the second one is, third one is like, oh, now we're getting the rules. And once, like, everybody's first script is like pretty generic. It's like, oh God, I just belched out a book, a by the book script. But then the magic is like you go in and say, all right, now I'm going to get my 1-page speech from the mayor of the town, and I've earned it because it's been a great story up to this point. So
awesome. Well,
stay tuned. We could
we
talk a
are,
lot more about
yeah,
screenwriting.
we could totally talk a lot more. And I'm sure we will have subsequent podcast episodes where that does happen. Our next episode is going to be a guest, Marco Gamboa. He is going to be talking with us about using our stories in a stand-up format and bringing humor to our writing. So I'm really excited about that topic as well.
Right.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye for now.